Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Denmead Parish Council and tonight's Planning Committee. You all know where the fire exits are, so I shall skip past that immediately. And you're also all aware that it's been recorded. Apologies, do we have any apologies?
Councillor Andreoli.
Councillor Andreoli, excellent. Declarations of interest arising from this agenda. Members and officers are invited to declare any relevant interests. Notwithstanding this item, members may subsequently declare an interest at any point during the meeting. No member, excellent. Minutes of previous meeting, to receive and confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 19th of July. Does anybody have any?
Agreed.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Not dated, but I'm sure you'll cope with that.
That's fine.
Planning Committee Project Report. To receive the project report from the committee clerk.
Oh, do you want me to go through it or?
I don't think there's any need to.
Okay.
I'm happy with it. If anybody wishes to go through it, excellent.
I'd just like to say that it's very good, thank you very much.
I would endorse that. And a small round of applause, I think. And moving on to 7, public participation. The meeting will recess for not more than 15 minutes to allow any members of the public to address the meeting. I'm delighted we have a member of the public here, and I'm aware that she's going to ask some questions. So if it's okay, we could go straight on into the planning applications. Number 8. Well, normally I'd read them all out and you'll say when you want to speak on them.
So, Chair, in a public session, you read out the planning applications,
Okay.
just so that...
That then gives our member of the public the opportunity to speak on each one.
Okay, application number 1 by Mr Mullineaux of Lindenley Uplands Road to Felon Oak.
On the documents on the Winchester website, none of the plans or anything are actually on the plan.
Sadly, I'm aware of that, so I actually spoke to Mr Mullineaux, got details of it, but that's why I took some photos so we can have a look at it later.
Yeah, and also on that same application, the trees were protected by a previous application, and I think this tree that he wants to take down was protected in the earlier application.
We will have to go through that shortly. Application number 2 from Mrs Sherry of St Christopher's, Lower Cravick Lane, to build an additional bay to the existing detached garage. Application number 3 from Mr Burridge, Barn Green Cottage, The Green, a single-storey rear extension with roof extension and rear dormer. Application number 4 from Mr K Brown of Spring Firs, Atlas Lane, to remove a covered lean-to and erect an oak-framed balcony at the rear of the property. Application number 5 from Mr Denman of 1 Littlemead, Denmead, T1 oak tree, reduce the crown back on the north side of the tree back to the fence line and the old pruning points. Remove major deadwood that is overhanging the boundary and general maintenance to stop encroachment over the garden.
That was actually on the council's one, isn't it? It's not in the garden.
Yep. Application number 6 by Mr Norman at 52 Hatchmore Road, Denmead. Land to the rear of the property, 3 oak trees, T1 crown lift 6 metres from the ground, a T2 reduce the width of the tree from 9 metres by 2.5 metres, and T3 reduce the width of the tree from 9 metres by 3 metres.
That's another one. The trees aren't actually on the property, and the garden is so tiny.
We will definitely talk about that. Application number 7 from Mrs Urry of 10 Creekview, converting the existing detached double garage to a residential ancillary annex.
On that one, I noticed that I think if they want to do it as a granny annex, but presumably you can put some sort of thing in the planning permission that says it stays with.
We'll talk about that in a short time as well.
And also in the design statement, they talked about possibly not being able to connect it to the main public farm sewer, and that it would have a septic tank, but there's no sort of indication of where the septic tank would be, or, I mean, presumably there must be potentially a problem there, otherwise we wouldn't have mentioned it. And that's it.
Okay, and application number 8 from Mr K Peters of Kimbers, Irville Road, to construct a single-storey site conservatory. Normally I change the order in which we take them, but if it's okay, I'll just take them in the order in which they come. So we go back to application number 1. Mr. Molyneux of Linden Lee in Uplands Road to fell an oak tree. Uplands Road, I'm sure you all know, is at the end of School Lane on the right, just before that magnificent broad lane. And as our member of the public has said, there is an arboricultural report on the Winchester planning site that is not shown. I popped in to see Mr. Molyneux, took a few photos, which I'm sure Councillor Langford Smith is going to reveal any second now. That is the tree. Thankfully, normally when I see an application for an oak tree to be felled, it's very disappointing because they're so often beautiful, mature trees. That, I think, is about 35 years old when you do the little measurements on it. It's south-facing, and on the other side of Uplands Road, there's a line of very, very tall, mature oak trees, and I guess that little tree is fighting for sunlight, which is why it's leaning south. It's on the edge of an irrigation ditch, which is often flooded, and as you can see, the roots are fairly exposed. To be honest, normally we would leave this, I guess, to Winchester, and there's a letter from the neighbour, obviously on that side, where the house is leaning in full support of the application. And the land is also the subject of a previous planning application to knock the house down and put some more houses up. But there's another application going in for a new single house, and certainly the tree isn't required to be felled for that application. Mr. Molyneux and the neighbour want it removed because they think it's going to fall over. So those are pretty well the facts. Any questions?
No question, but I will propose that we leave it to the tree officer.
Totally. All those in favour? Yeah. Wonderful. Application number 2 is from Mrs. Sherry. I only know the pronunciation because there was a rugby league player with the same surname, of St Christopher's in Lower Crabbit Lane, which is an additional car bay on the existing detached garage. As you can see from the location map, this is the road opposite the Fox and Hounds. St Christopher's is a large and very secluded plot of land. If we look at the plans, there's basically, as you can see, there's already a two-bay garage with a storeroom at one end, and the application is to extend it by one bay. You can't see it from the road, you can't see it from the neighbours, it's fully enclosed. It looks a pretty uncomplicated build. There's no bathrooms or showers or kitchens fitted. It's literally a one bay extension to the garage. That's the existing. Then you have any questions on the facts? Councillor Brown?
Only comment I would have is that the garage already has 2 bays and they're just not using one of them because they've got a store in there.
If you actually go in there, you'll find it's got lawn mowers, all sorts of things in the one bay. It's a very large plot. You certainly can't see anything off there.
I know the house.
Yeah.
It's the house of a former councillor.
Ah. Yes.
I would propose I see no planning reason to object to it.
Nor can I.
Seconded.
Right, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Application number 3 is from Mr. Burridge at Barn Green Cottage for a single-storey rear extension with roof extension and rear dormer. The house is located next to the White Hart and facing the village green. It's worth looking at the plans. I took a couple of photos because it's obviously part of a major development and the work has massively started. It's the The one in the middle there, which has most of the land, the adjoining houses are very small. Most of the land behind the three houses is owned by the one barn cottage. Basically, the extension goes 3.5 metres backwards from top to bottom. As you can see on the top right-hand bit, on the bottom right-hand bit as well.
What else would you like to bring up?
Well, it's worth looking at the photos just to show that it's already full of builders' vans. That's the front. And that's the back. They're already doing the work. Not much more you can say than that, really, Councillor Brown.
It should be part retrospective because they have already started without permission, and that should be noted. It also changes the front appearance of the house as well, which changes its setting and the setting of the village green, I think. I know that's probably an opinion, but it does. There are alterations to the front of the property. There has been applications, I think it was the Nook, which is the house to the left of it.
It is the small one,
And
yes.
it's very complicated because their boundary is not straight. So it gets very complicated as to whose bit of which
The
building
downstairs
is.
and the upstairs boundaries are different.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, certainly there's no objection from either neighbour.
Could you show the pictures of the existing and what is proposed?
That's
to
the
change?
Are you talking about the front?
Front,
Sorry, just for
obviously.
clarification.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the existing front.
Yeah.
And that's the proposed front.
It looks like the only difference is a porch.
It's changing windows completely. Every window on the front of the house changes.
Sadly, the elevations aren't that clear, but it does look like the windows change. Any questions on facts or comments, opinions? Councillor Smith?
Looking back at photographs of this particular property over the years, it used to be a shop, an old grocer shop, and I then believe it was a freezer shop. So the face of the property has changed significantly throughout the years. I personally can't see any material planning reason that we would object.
I have to say I agree with that comment. Is that a proposal?
I propose no objection.
I would second that.
Would you like me to mention the part retrospective bit?
I'm happy to mention Hartwich, but I don't think it's going to make any difference to them.
It's not illegal to put in a retrospective application.
We need to have a vote. We've had a second proposal.
Let's have a vote, please. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to application number 4. It's from Mr. K. Brown at Spring Firs in Aplis Lane, World's End, and is to remove a covered lean-to and fit an oak frame balcony at the rear of the house. Aplis Lane, I'm sure you know, goes south of Forest Road by the Chairmakers. I did call round to have a look at it, and the lean-to is no longer there. It's been replaced by scaffolding, but there's no balcony put up at this stage. Councillor Brown?
As no one can see this, I would propose that there is no planning reason to object to it. It looks out over the fields, it doesn't look out on neighbours. Neighbouring property runs around behind it, but there's no buildings as such behind.
I also have no objection.
Carried unanimously. Moving on to application number 5 from Mr Denman at 1 Littlemead. Is to prune an oak tree. Littlemead Edging as a turn off Forest Road. The application is to reduce the ground to the fence line and to the previous pruning points. Dead wood will be removed at the same time. Yes, Karen.
Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
I went along earlier this evening and took some photographs.
Oh, well done.
I held my camera directly at the fence line, so that's what the picture, the part to the right of the picture there is. So you can see the canopy of the tree is quite high. This is the canopy of the tree. It is a mature oak tree, but it is a significant way away from their boundary.
Yeah.
And it is a fabulous tree.
It is indeed a beautiful tree. The fact that there were previous pruning points, I would assume that it's had planning permission to be pruned back to those points in the past.
I couldn't actually see pruning points.
Councillor Brown.
Potentially it could have been done before the tree was TPO'd.
Okay.
It doesn't mean to say at some point it will have been TPO'd. It could have been done before then.
So opinion?
You are allowed to remove deadwood from TPO trees. You do not need a planning application to do that.
Yeah.
The canopy on this is very high and it is a significant tree on the street scene. Unfortunately, we did lose a tree that was also a significant part of the street scene on the other side of the road. That was a parish council tree and was removed without our permission. I don't see the need for any work to this tree.
Councillor Brown?
If they're planning on taking the tree line back to the boundary, you'll take the side off of that canopy. If they're truly going back in a vertical line back to the boundary, and it's a massively high tree,
I think it would change the shape of the tree significantly, spoil the whole view of the tree, and I certainly don't like the idea of it being done.
I think it's excessive.
it affects the public amenity of the tree.
So are we a proposal to say we're against this, or we don't want to just leave it to the tree officer?
No, well, I would second if that's a proposal that we object to the application for it being unnecessary works to a healthy tree.
With the exception of the deadwood.
With the exception, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those in favour? Carried. Right, application number 6 is from Mr Norman at 52 Hatchmere Road and affects 3 oak trees to the rear of the property. There are several letters on file. One is a letter of support from Mrs Payne, who lives at the adjoining number 54, who comments that the trees will have to be pruned now or at some time in the future. There's also a strong objection from Mr and Mrs Duran at 15 Harvest Road, which is as follows. The oak trees involved in this planning application are located on our property. I would like to strongly object to this application as this is unnecessary work which would damage and completely unbalance 3 ancient oaks which have stood here considerably longer than any of the housing surrounding them. These oaks have been subject to previous applications. In 2015, Mrs Hughes applied using our address for this level of removal. This was refused by Winchester as it would be harmful to the oaks. In 2017, an application from Mr Norman to reduce the branches by 2 metres to 7 metres was refused. The TPO officer reported that it was unwarranted and unjustified and would adversely affect the tree's form and appearance and would not have a positive effect on the trees. This latest application goes even further to crown lifting T1 to 6 metres and reducing the branches by 3 metres to 6 metres. Given little or no growth in the intervening years since the last application, the branches are still 9 metres in length and the more severe works requested, I cannot see any justification for this application. I therefore strongly object to the works proposed and hope that the council and TPO officer will agree. Councillor Brown.
I take point on what that's just been said. I think it is excessive work on trees and it will unbalance the trees because it's being done on one side of the tree.
Yeah.
And to take 3 metres off of one or off of 2 of them and 2.5 off of another one is a sizable chunk off of the tree.
Totally agree.
And I would
If that's a proposal to object,
I would put a strong objection in.
I would second that.
Agreed.
All those in favour?
As we put a strong objection, do we wish it to go to committee? Or are we happy that the tree officer?
I think the tree officer has clearly shown his comments in the past, and by the looks of it, there's been minimal growth since then. So it seems likely he hopefully would support us now.
Yep.
Application number 7 is from Mrs. Urry at 10 Creech View to convert an existing double garage to residential ancillary annex. Creech View is located northeast of Forest Road in a small private road. Number 10 is a detached house in a large plot with a separate double garage. The proposal is a change of use to provide an annex for the applicant's 91-year-old mother. I'm sure if you look at the plans, that there's a detailed planning statement, but the house is bordered in red there. That's the double garage on the right, with the simple conversion. Councillor Brown?
We have to discount the fact that it's for 91-year-old mother. It has no planning influence, shall I say.
Okay. As a comment, before we actually discuss the extension or not of the application, it's been submitted to Winchester in terms of there are 2 mature trees close by. The principal tree officer has no objection to the build subject to planning and has recommended some protective measures, and the arboricultural report confirms the development is sustainable. Within the planning statement, they acknowledge that this could be seen as an independent building, but they would be happy at their terminology for a condition to be added that the occupation remains ancillary. That's pretty well, Councillor Brown.
I'm from past experience of Winchester and upholding ancillary things or conditions they put on properties. They quite often get overturned. Whilst this is in the back garden, you could potentially fence it off and make it into a separate dwelling. My other concerns are the size of the property. There are minimum standards for house building effectively, for room size and things like that. And I don't think this is big enough for someone to live in, especially someone who is they are saying it's for a 91-year-old person. There is no room to turn things like a wheelchair around if they needed a wheelchair, which I presume at some point they will.
Well, actually, I think that's a little bit irrelevant because she could be bedbound, who knows. I don't think that probably makes a lot of difference.
My calculation, Chair, I work it out to be just under 6 metres square. If you go on the 1 to 50,000 scale, 1 to 50 scale, that's 0 to 5. And I literally work that out to be just over 5 metres by just over 5 metres. So
Which
25
would be a
metres.
typical double garage, yes.
Yeah, 25 metres square. And minimum room sizes. A bedroom, 25 metres square. That's without a kitchen, without a dining room, without bathroom.
Councillor Brown?
And on that note, you've measured the external size of the building. So you have to take off the width of the walls so that it makes the living space inside even smaller. My theory, they are converting it and not actually knocking it down and rebuilding it from the plans.
I think room sizes are building regulations. I don't think it's
I
actually a
was-
planning issue.
I was going to say, I'm not sure that the building room size, it can be anything to do with planning. Is there is there a reason to object on a planning ground? Councillor Brown?
We did object to the sizes that they were trying to build the houses at Carpenter's Field on a planning application because they were making them too small to squeeze more houses in effectively. It's
yes, Chair, Councillor Brown's quite correct. We did point out that the houses were smaller. They did meet minimum standards, but they were smaller than the market size because the ones that were smaller were the affordable housing. And we objected to the fact that the affordable housing would be smaller than the market housing. And Winchester agreed with us on that and they upheld it. And that's how it got reduced from 99 houses to 91.
Would the regulations for an elderly relative living there be the same as an open market room that's going to be rented out? I'd imagine it'd be quite different. Councillor Brown?
As I said earlier, it's irrelevant that it's a 91-year-old person because if they sell the house tomorrow, it is a dwelling in the property.
Councillor Hanford-Smith?
I know it's small, but there are smaller flats in London.
Doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it wrong against planning regulations, that's the key.
Rules, absolutely.
Councillor Brown?
As was brought up by a member of the public earlier on, they have also potentially cannot connect it to main sewer and are looking to put cesspit in, which means that at some point a vehicle has to get in there to empty a cesspit.
I would imagine, again, that's going to be building regulations. It's not going to be a planning issue, is it? Clearly, we're as a council worried about the potential for the house to be used for an alternative purpose at some stage in the future. And we obviously can ask for the condition to put on there, which they've already said they would like. I can't actually see a reason we can object on other grounds.
I agree, I see no material reason to object.
Do we ask Winchester to put on the
It remains ancillary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Condition to be added that occupation remains ancillary?
Okay.
Right, we have a proposal. We have me as a seconder. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Brown. Application number 8 is from Mr Peters at Kimbers, Irvilles Road, World's End, for a single-storey side extension. If you drive down School Lane, past that beautiful house in Broad Lane, and turn left at the end, and Kimbers is a few hundred yards on the left-hand side. I'm sure we can look at a few elevations. Yeah, there's some more, I think, aren't there? Oh, that's the building. Sorry, on the left, top left, is the new one. On the right there, top left again, is the new glass roofed conservatory that projects out. It's at the back of the building, away from the road. It looks a pretty straightforward build that's about 5 metres square. Enough for people to live in, obviously. Plenty of parking, no trees affected, no neighbours affected. Neighbours can't even see it. Any questions on facts or any opinions?
I can see no reason to object, Chair.
They may regret a conservatory, but no reason to object.
All those in favour? Wonderful. Right, so planning application is done. Number 9, decisions received. Right. 5 decisions received. Mr and Mrs James, single-storey extension at Hilton Green Forest Road was permitted. We did not object. The fire pit requested by Mr Ty at 2 Kidmore Field was also permitted, and again we had no objection and no previous experience of fire pits. Mr Cause, a woodpecker, woodpeckers in Uplands Road for a rear ground floor extension was permitted, we had no objection. And Mr Leaves, construction of a single-storey rear extension at H Creeks View was also permitted with no objection. And finally, Mrs Butler's at Wangerley in Newlands Lane was a change to the original planning consent, and the decision was to accept the non-material minor amendments. Item number 10, new planning applications. 2, how exciting. So number 11, confidential report, to pass a resolution in accordance with the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1960 to exclude the public and press for discussion relating to the following, and to receive the confidential report and enforcement report from the committee clerk on enforcement issues and notices and tree preservation orders.